This is sort of. This is a black oak tree, and you can sort of tell it by the way the bark pattern is. It has this sort of linear look to it with dark blackness in between the cracks rather than red. And the acorn has, the cap has hairs on it. Oh, wow. Which distinguishes it. There's a little creature that was maybe trying to eat the acorn. So when they're ripe, you can really pop it out of the cap like this. You can, and because this disconnects from the base of the cap, and then that's a ripe acorn. If you wanted to plant this, you should plant it right away, because they don't dry out. If they dry out, they die.
I see.
So really, blue jays and squirrels are the ones that really are distributing acorns, and because they specifically bury them and then go back and find them later.
Of course.
If they miss a few, then an oak tree can sprout. So one trick that I use when I'm testing to see if it's a viable one, because if a caterpillar has actually gotten in and eaten the starches that are on the inside, like that, you can see that hole. So that would be your first clue that this isn't a good acorn. But sometimes you can't see that, and so if you put them in water for 24 hours and they sink, they're good. If they float, they've been eaten, or they're not.
Have some form of decay starting already. Yeah.
Something's not. This goldenrod is great for bees. I mean, all goldenrods are, but this particular species probably isn't one that people want in their gardens, but if it's around the edge of their yard, it's good, because it's good for bees, but it spreads a lot. There are other species that stay more in a small clump, but these will turn, once the bees have pollinated them, they'll turn brown, and then there'll be little fluffy seeds that could be collected and planted. And then this is an aster. Yeah, this is a New York aster. It grows along rivers, but it's not really that. It doesn't have to be wet, but it can tolerate wetness. But that's another easy one to grow from seed. Let me see.
How would you do that? How would you go about that?
Well, I'm just looking to see if I can find any that are mature. They're not quite mature yet, but we can look at them. So inside here are all these little. So this right there is a seed, and so when these are dry, this feathery part will open up and they get blown on the wind and get carried.
They become these little parachutes.
Little
right?
parachutes, yeah. So you would just take these, they would turn sort of a gray-brown color, and these nice full ones, you just take those and plant them pretty shallow. They're pretty small seeds, so you could just plant them, like 1/8 of an inch of soil on top of them. But when they start to mature, this all this pappus, it's called, dries out, and the petals disappear, and then they're just sort of ready to take off. When you're trying to decide, well, is a seed ripe? Is it ready to harvest? I mean, the plant tells you, because it's ready to disperse.
So this is the JOE-PYE weed?
JOE-PYE weed,
Excellent.
Yeah. And then these are the seed heads of it here, and these are ready to be harvested. You can see it's gone from this to to, you know, these different stages, and then it's completely dry. And if you just touch it, they fall out.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And so there's a lot of stuff that is sort of leafy looking, which is not seed. And then, but these little black bits that are, that's the seed, and it's attached to that.
So those two have sort of that
feathery
little thing that's meant to help it fly through the air, to catch the wind.
Yep, because they're all goldenrods and asters and JOE-PYE weed are all in the aster family.
Okay.
And they all, like a dandelion, have this floating seed. And
oh, that's amazing.
so you just, so that would give you, I don't know, 30 plants maybe.
Wow.
They all germinated. And you can see, I mean, plants produce a lot of seed, but some of it gets eaten, some of it lands someplace where it can't grow, or it gets washed away, and so it's all a numbers game. This is BAPTISIA. This is it's a plant in the pea family. So it's nitrogen fixing, meaning it can take nitrogen out of the atmosphere and put it into the soil. It takes it in through a bacteria that grows on its roots, but so it helps the other plants around it to grow. And like everything that is in the pea family, it has these pea pods for their seed pods. So this one, let's see. So it splits just like a bean or a pea down the middle. And there's nobody in that one. A lot of insects eat these, so you can see that one didn't work, but you can hear they're rattling. So there's some in some of these pods. So maybe this one.
Oh, yeah.
It's got a couple of these little, so they, like a bean, they attach on these little umbilical cords in a sense. But there's the seed. So if you wanted to plant these, what you would have to do, this would be a good time to collect them when the pods are splitting open. But pea family seeds have what's a very hard seed coat, meaning that the outer layer is really tough, and that is a way to keep them dormant until the conditions are just right for germinating. So in order to make it right for them, you have to actually take sandpaper, just at like 100 grit sandpaper, and just lightly sand them for 15 seconds to just scratch the surface a little bit, and then they can take in water. They can imbibe. And then they can germinate, because they need that water to trigger them.
So how do they do that in nature? Where they don't
Well,
have
they would
sandpaper?
fall. Well, they could do it a couple ways. They could go through a bird's gizzard and not be digested and come out the other side, or they could fall to the ground, and as time goes on and
just get
animals
scuffed
walk
up.
over them, they get scuffed up. A lot of them live on sandy soil, so it's pretty rough.
And so with those, like, would they basically just hang out and wait until they got water? They would be good
wait.
until,
Until the conditions were right for them.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
The ducks like the little tattoo.
Yeah.
Look how many ducks there are.
There's these ones that have a sort of round-ish leaf that looks sort of like a hook of a moose or something. And then there are these wider ones that have kind of a wrinkled edge. So the wrinkled edge ones have a yellow flower, and the rounded ones have the white water lily flower. And at the base of the flower, the seed pod forms. And then they do a really cool thing. The stem that the flower is on starts to spiral. It literally starts to, instead of growing straight, it starts to turn itself to become in a spiral shape, like a slinky.
Yeah.
And then the seed pod bends down, and the stem, I guess through the spiraling, I'm not really sure mechanically how it happens, but it draws it down to the bottom so that the seed pod can land in the mud, and that when the seeds are ripe, they just fall out and germinate. This is another pea family, and then you can see the bumps of the seeds on the outside. So these pods are still green, so they're immature still. But there's a lot of seeds in there. And oh, here, look. There they are.
Oh,
Isn't that amazing?
Oh, I know them. I already got them now. Yeah.
oh, they're beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, they really do so many shades.
Yeah. Yeah, so each one of these will form a seed pod if they have time. Yeah. The asters.
But the golden seal, the asters, the golden seal, everything is here.
Yeah. The goldenrod and the
Goldenrod.
yeah. So the cool thing about this plant, it's called groundnut. And groundnut, because the stem underground has a tuber that it where it stores carbohydrates in the winter. So it's like a potato.
Yep.
Yeah. And so it was a really valuable food source for Native Americans all around the sort of eastern part of this continent, and for European settlers when they first came here, it was one of the sort of survival foods.
Wow.
And so there are a few people that are trying to figure out the genetics of this plant, because there seem to be a lot of different genotypes. They're all the same species, but they have different genetics, so they present themselves slightly differently, like having big seed pods or very few seed pods is what I've seen. But because it was such a valuable food, it was brought all up and down the East Coast from the Missouri area and the south into the northern part of the East Coast as the glaciers started to retreat and people started to move into this area. So it's kind of an interesting plant that way, and it's, you know, still very present on the.
Yeah.
This is a red maple. This is our state tree.
That's we're standing under the state tree. Look
We are
at that.
standing under the state tree. Yeah, and beginning to turn red.
Just at the very tips, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
A lot of red. Yeah. And that red is a dogwood that there. And it's interesting, the leaves have a lot of holes in them because evidently they were very popular with some caterpillars.
Lacy leaves.
Yeah.
And this is beautiful.
If we look up here, this is the sweet gum tree. So you can see the leaves are kind of these star-shaped, sort of palm-shaped leaves. And it's actually a more southern tree naturally, but it's planted as a street tree and it survives nicely here, and it may move north as things warm up more. But these are seed pods, so this is this year's pod and this is last year's. And I was trying to find a good one, but I don't know if you can see that little mouth right there. That's where the seed pops out, which on a witch hazel, if anyone knows that, is the same structure, and it just opens up and it actually ejects the seed.
As it dries, it opens up.
Yeah, so these are not quite ready yet, and I don't know, sometimes squirrels eat things and they end up dropping to the ground. But yeah, these will dry, and the mature ones will just pop the seeds out.
That's crazy.